You're listening to The Women in the Arena. I'm your host, Paige Renee, former collegiate athlete turned leadership entrepreneur for women just like you. Each week, I'm bringing you a new person or message to help you expand and elevate into the woman you know you're meant to be. Now, let's step into the arena. All right, you guys, we are back inside the arena with none other than Jessica Hendrix, who is the president and CEO of Saatchi&Saatchi X, and a mom and a wife, and somebody that I've always been drawn to, especially when it comes to a female leader. So I have a really stupid question probably to ask, but why is there the title president and CEO? Can you explain a little bit about that?
It's such a great question, and quite transparently, in the world in which we operate inside of Publicis, the organization that I work with is a part of a holding company. Publicis is the holding company. I am actually just titled through their organizational design system as president. However, when I was put in this role, I was put in this role as president and CEO, but I would say it's really just more of a titling historical thing that has just continued on. I wish I had a more sexy response to that, but I don't.
No, that's totally cool. I really just didn't know. And I was stalking you and the information that was out there about you, which is a lot, and it's really impressive. And so one of the articles I came across was 3W magazine. And you talk about what's really important about being a female leader in probably corporate America, because that's where you are. Can you touch on some of that? What are some really important characteristics to have and embody as you're leading other people? I think just as a point of reference, you mentioned being empathetic, being courageous, being vulnerable. Do you still stand behind those? And what do those mean to you?
I do. I actually had a really great conversation this morning with a coworker that doesn't report to me directly and also happens to be someone who's not female. So he and I were talking, and as you were just asking me that question, Paige, I was reflecting back on that conversation and thinking about the fact that I was talking to someone who's not a female. And when I first referenced that, probably in that article and other articles earlier on in my position and role at Saatchi X, I probably would have leaned into those words more specifically around women and coaching and mentoring women. But what I think is important as leaders and as we grow is those are things and qualities that are important in whoever you're connecting with. And I think that as a female leader, whatever gender I'm speaking to, when I think about vulnerability and when I think about trust and when I think about the factors that really build strong relationships, authenticity is really important to that. And for me, as I think about a female leader reflecting on other leaders, I want you to be able to be authentic as a parent, as a leader, as a spouse. And how I tell stories around my life and how I show vulnerability around my life in whatever those roles are really allows me to open the door to a deeper conversation and connect with people in a completely different way. I believe that embodying that as a female leader, but really embodying that as a human and how that can show up for all leaders is really important. And I have to tell you, my voice in the last probably 2 years, really focusing on a collective we versus a specific gender has been really important for me and has been a part of my most recent female leadership journey as the next chapter. So I love that you asked that question and that it's something that's on my mind right now too.
Did you always see yourself in this position? Like when you were younger, we're talking about very young Jess. Did you see yourself on such a big stage, president and CEO? It just sounds so awesome.
No, young Jess was going to be a lawyer. Young Jess took her LSATs and applied for law schools. And then I took a different detour. What I love is solving problems. I love working with people to create really great work and do really cool things. But when this opportunity was put in front of me, it was very unexpected. And I definitely saw myself having a few more steps until I got to this stage. And it was incredibly frightening while at the same time very honoring and celebratory. Like all of the feelings that you can imagine, but I was also very afraid of failure, afraid of expectations, my own probably just as much as others. So young Jess did not wake up when she was 12 and say, I want to be the president of a company one day. I knew that I wanted to make an impact. I knew that I wanted to lead people, but this role definitely pushed me into a space that I hadn't considered myself in as quickly as I achieved it.
I just think it's really cool to be talking to you about this in general. So I really want to dive in. Can you take us back to when the opportunity was presented and all of the fears that you faced? What did you really lean in on to take that step forward and decide, okay, I am ready for this, or I'm going to be ready for this?
It's a funny story, and I don't know how many people know this story. So for some, this is going to be maybe your first time hearing it. But I got asked to be a part of a presentation to some senior leadership inside of our holding company. I was a SVP at the time. I was working really closely with my successor, and she said, hey, we've got this meeting in New York. I'd like you to present. Go to the meeting in New York. I'd had this moment, and I was telling Jody, my husband, I feel like there's something else going on at this meeting. I was trying to figure it out. I was probably overcomplicating. It was just a presentation. So get to the meeting. I call him afterwards. I was like, presentation went great. Nothing else happened. We're about ready to board our flight. I'll talk to you when I land. Get on the plane, and my predecessor was in a different cabin than I was in, and walked back to where I was, and there was no one sitting next to me, and sat down and said, hey, I just want you to know that while we were there, I spoke to them about you potentially stepping into my role. I just about fell out of my chair while buckled in on the plane. And it was really a surreal moment, completely surreal, because whatever expectations I had going into that presentation, which were not that I was going to be asked to take her role, it was, I had already gotten past, nothing had happened. So I'd already closed that out as any potential. Going to that step was certainly significant. And quite frankly, the emotions that I felt were just a lot. And I would say overwhelm was probably one of the larger things that I felt, because there was so much that I hadn't been exposed to that was a part of her role, that even at that moment, I knew I was just scratching the surface. And as we moved forward in further discussions, and they considered other candidates, and there was a lengthy process. So it wasn't an immediate process to get there. But I will never forget, this I have shared in other public forums, is the first day that I walked into the office and into our Springdale office. And we have a Cincinnati office, and we have many people throughout the US. And I just had this incredible feeling of, I am responsible for all of the people. It was a really emotional moment for me. I had a lot of pride. I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of excitement. And I think as a leader, having all of those feelings is part of what makes you a good leader, because you are bringing all of those things to the table as part of your decision-making process. You've got to think about those individuals that are coming to this place of employment to spend a very big portion of their day and a big portion of their energy and their life's work with you. It was an unexpected journey with a lot of feelings. And I still have some of those feelings today. And I can't imagine that I won't.
Thank you for being so candid about it, because I think a lot of times on the outside, when you see people in general in big positions or powerful positions or doing something that you perceive to be scary, it's easy to think, well, they've got it all together, or they're very confident, or, well, it must be easy for them. And part of wanting to have this podcast, The Women in the Arena, is to share the backstory and really just share how it is scary and you figure out a way to do it anyways, or you experience the emotion and know that doesn't define you. And it's just a process of you moving forward and moving through. And I think that's really important to hear.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women, and I will say this about women in particular, I think you do have this view of someone, I do this, where you see someone and how they're physically presented or you see how they speak or what their bag looks like. And we forget that there's another person on the other side. So those who know me well know that if you see me outside of work or on the weekends, there's a 99.9% probability I'm going to have my hair in a bun and I'm probably going to be in athleisure. But a lot of people who meet me in this role might not think that. And that is because we are all multidimensional and we are all human. And so, again, I think it's really important to acknowledge and think about those things when you come to work or when you step into a role, because you're bringing all of those things with you. You're bringing your whole self.
Well, speaking of whole self, there is a part of this that connects us that I haven't touched on. So I'll probably bounce around a bit. But for those of you listening, I first met you and your husband, were the owners, just at CrossFit Commence. So that is my CrossFit home now. And I think this was back in 2018. I guess this lends itself to balance, but you're running this business. He's in real estate and then you're working at Saatchi. Can you tell us a little bit about what was that like being gym owners at the same time?
I get this question a lot from people that know that side of our lives as well. Jody certainly does a lot of the heavy lifting. Good CrossFit pun there. I'm trying to work in dad jokes along the way. But CrossFit and fitness and health has been a passion in my life for a long time. And when you're passionate about something, and Paige, I know you can relate to this, it's easy to find the time outside of work and have it become an area of passion that isn't necessarily tied to your profession. And I think that's important. It's not going to show up as a second business or job or whatever it might be. For some, it might just show up as, you're involved in a different type of community. But for us, we decided to invest in the business and really truly invest in the community of CrossFit. And we had it for 10 years. And my role, I always get a chuckle out of this, was I would call it primarily scheduling. The new owner, of course, has now said, "You never told me scheduling is literally the hardest part of this." And I was like, "You're right, it is." But it really is something that allowed me to connect in a different way than the work that I do. And that for me is really important. And quite frankly, I have not found what that other thing is yet with us not being the owners anymore. When I talk about balance, strangely, it gave me balance on the Saatchi X side to have something else to be able to invest time and energy into outside of work. And therefore, that was definitely something that I felt good about where I was investing my time and felt very positive about it. As our kids have gotten older, what ultimately led to the decision to put it into better, more dedicated hands was really our kids' age, the life stage that we're at, and really wanting to see it continue to flourish in a different way. It's been hard. It has been both very sad in a lot of ways, but incredibly happy and celebratory in other ways.
Well, congratulations for making the decision. I know from the inside, as a coach at the gym, that it was a really big transition. And it honestly reminds me of that book that you recommended, The Necessary Endings. So I went to coffee with Jess a while ago just because I wanted to pick her brain. I was new in figuring out what I wanted to do in business. And I think I probably opened up about a relationship that I knew I didn't need to be in. And she recommended the book by Dr. Henry Cloud, and it's called Necessary Endings. And it was the biggest punch in the gut.
I think you and I talked about it. It's like one of those books that when you read it, you're like, at certain points, you shut it, because it's so hard to read.
And that was so big for me in that season of my life. It was about a relationship that I knew I needed to end, but I also knew that it needed to end because of the energy it was taking away from what I really wanted to do. And so I always ask women leaders about personal relationships because I think it really does weigh so heavily on your business. Really just the way you move about your life. And when I say relationship, I'm talking about like your priority relationship. And for you, that's Jody and of course your kids. But when it comes to your relationship with Jody, how do you feel you've had to navigate that through the years, being multiple business owners, really? What is the advice that you can give? I get married in August. What kind of premarital advice can I get from you?
Well, we've been together 20 years. So here's what I will share about relationships. And my sweet husband has heard me tell him this far too many times. In life, you're on a continuum, and that continuum includes different seasons or stages of your life. And for relationships and marriage, and especially when you're starting a family or you have a family or you're at different life careers, your relationship is going to evolve as those stages evolve. What Jody and I talk a lot about is he often reflects back on very early times in our marriage when we didn't have kids or we didn't have the responsibilities that we have today. And it's hard to think about the amount of time we have today together, which is very different. Are we getting interrupted by our children every 5 seconds while we're just trying to have a conversation about the end of the day? Yes, is the answer to that. And so what is important, and I'm glad you asked this question, because it's really ensuring that you are still finding moments and times to connect. And that looks very different for us now that our kids go to bed at the same time we do, pretty much, versus when they were little and they went to bed at 7 o'clock, right? The space that you had and the time that you have. We try to have lunch every Friday, which is honestly, there's always this awkward moment when we sit down where there's no kids around. Especially lately, it's been even more where we're not talking about the gym the way we used to. It was like, okay, let's have lunch. We're going to talk about gym stuff or whatever. And that's awesome, because what we're talking about is a deeper level of discussion around other topics that I think connect us from a relationship standpoint. Humor is super important for us. So you've seen us be silly and goofy, but that's an important part for us, making sure that we have time away from our kids, disconnecting from life. And he's a real estate agent. He has really wacky time constraints that fall outside of what I'll call the traditional workday. It just takes a lot of effort. It's hard some days. It's really easy other days. The partnership that we have, because it is extended in so many different places, it's just communication, intentionality of time, the things that you've probably heard already.
You guys, when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I had very few examples of women in leadership positions. And sometimes when I shared what I was building with my friends or with my coworkers at the time, they just didn't really get it. Even when I wanted to create some new goals and talk about those ambitions, I didn't feel like I had a community of women to share that with, which is why I found an online community of other multi-passionate, like-minded women. If you can relate, join us in our Rise Facebook community, where you get free weekly coaching, a network of amazing women who are also in the arena, and you're the first to know about the latest offers. Women leaders rise together. See you inside our Rise Facebook community. You can find the link in the show notes. We finished marriage counseling not too long ago, and it brought up a lot of topics that we had talked about. But honestly, I think this might be a little bit vulnerable to share. We've been living together for a while, and I think sometimes not okay. In Arkansas, at least, is what I found. A little bit more like faux pas. And so what I found is that when we were in marriage counseling and we went through this 8-week sequence, we had really been forced to work through a lot of this because we had merged our lives already. And that felt like we were a little bit ahead having those conversations. And not that it was a competition. I'm not trying to be like the person I am in CrossFit in marriage counseling, but it was really important to have those conversations early on. And that is a consistent thing that we've heard, is you have to make that time intentionally because it doesn't come easily. But I've honestly already been learning some of those hard lessons, having been full-time in entrepreneurship for a little over a year now. If I'm not prioritizing certain things in my day, like marketing, for example, on social media, then like when it comes to the end of the day and he's trying to have a conversation and my face is stuck in my phone and he's like, can you just talk to me? And I'm like, well, it still works. So it still counts. It's not like I'm scrolling social media, but I found that lesson in a very probably small way because it's just us and our dog. We don't even have kids yet. But it's nice to hear that and to continually think about it where we are in the season of our life now.
And I think it's great that you guys are experiencing that. And look, I'll take whatever criticism I'll get by making this statement. But I think figuring out how to bring your lives as close together before you're in a permanent, lifelong situation is important. And you do get exposed to sides of people that you didn't have until that moment. And those are the things that you're going to have to work through. And you've heard the saying, it's easy to love someone, it's harder to like them. When you're living with someone, your love is going to get tested, your like is going to get tested, and you got to figure out how to work through those things. You've got some constraints now, but you add kids into that mix and the dynamic is very different. Again, that continuum is knowing that we're going to be married for a long time. The portion of time that our kids are at an age where they need us in a way that requires more of our attention is a shorter period of time comparative to the balance of our lives. But you still have to make sure you're finding time for each other. Jody competes at a high level inside of CrossFit. When he's gearing up for the games, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of commitment. And so we have to work to make sure we're spending time together in those moments and seasons as well. I think you guys are pointed in the right direction in all the ways.
Thank you for saying that. Hopefully we'll continue that on. We have 10 more months before we make our final decision. I'm just kidding. Obviously, we're saying I do. Yeah, but who's counting? So going to CrossFit, I want to share something with you that I don't think I've told you. I don't know why I would have told you this, but it means a lot to me. When you guys were the owners, there was a split in our gym where there was another gym opening and members were essentially making a decision. Do we go to the new gym? Do we stay at the gym we're at? And when you're in the community, like it felt like dramatic, it felt tumultuous, and it felt like a lot of things were moving. I'm sure I can't even imagine what it felt like as owners. I remember going into it thinking to myself, oh, maybe I'll explore the other option. Why not? I love competing. I love CrossFit. So it's not really a matter of if I'm going to continue doing it, but where. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I decided to stay at Commence. And one of those big reasons was you. I love Jody too, but it was because I just really liked you and how you carried yourself. I remember during that time, one of the coaches sharing that you had an analogy that you used for that harmony and that balance that I was so drawn to with you. And it's that 3-legged stool. Can you share what that means to you?
Yeah. And it's funny because you sometimes put things out there that stick and some things don't. And this is definitely one that has stuck for me and stuck with others that I've shared it with. For me, the 3-legged stool is absolutely critical to how I am able to move through life in a way that I feel congruent with the things that are important to my why and ultimately who I am and my purpose. And it is my family. It is my work and it is myself, and the energy and the time that I put into those 3 things. And when I say myself, I want to be specific to say, for me, that looks like learning, as evidenced by Paige's book reference. I love to read. I love to learn. I would literally be a student in college sitting in the front row for the rest of my life. I very much enjoy alone time, and that is important to me recharging my batteries. So that is one of the legs of the stool. My family, my husband, and my time with my children is absolutely very important to me. I think I've shared this with you before, Paige, and others have heard it, but I travel for work often, and I have a 2-night rule. And so my 2-night rule, unless I'm traveling internationally or there's a really stretch of an exception, is I really try not to travel for more than 2 nights away from my family. Now, that typically means I have to leave really early in the morning, or I might get home really late at night. But I've created that boundary very specifically because it's important for me to wake up and snuggle with my kids in the morning. It's important for me to have dinner with them at night. It's important for me to spend time with my husband during the week and not just be a weekend family warrior. Those are important things to me. And that is another leg of the stool. And then the other leg is my work and my profession, which is important to me. I started working when I was 14 and I haven't stopped since. There are times that I have worked too much and I have fallen into that workaholic space, sometimes out of necessity and sometimes maybe I'm avoiding something else. And so I lean more heavily into that side. But when any of those legs of the stool get out of balance, I can feel it. And it may present itself in different ways before I acknowledge it consciously. It might mean I'm crankier on a response when Jody asks me a question or my kids ask me a question. That usually signifies for me I'm out of balance in some way. It could be I haven't exercised. I view that as investment of time into myself. Is my fitness good? Am I spending time in quiet spaces and reflecting? Am I reading? Or is it I've been traveling too much and I'm not showing up as my best self at work, therefore I need to spend more time with my family? I think about the stool often. I can always see a picture of it in my head. It's a very boring stool. It's brown. It's like that terrible tan brown color, but it's 3 legs. And so that visual for me of recognizing where I'm at in balance is important for me keeping focused on what I need to focus on.
I really appreciate that analogy and that visual too, because as you were talking and you were saying if one's out of balance, I was just thinking so literally. I'm like, yeah, you can't sit on it.
And I would say there have been times when it's been way out of whack. And most recently, I had to have a conversation with the person I report to and say, I've got too much on my plate. I need help. And that is really hard for me. But it was showing up in ways that I had 2 of my legs that were severely out of balance. And not only could I not sit on the stool, I couldn't even get the stool to stand up. So yes, it's a good analogy for all those reasons. And thank you for sharing that on the commence side. That means a lot. And I appreciate you sharing that with me.
I felt like it was when I was preparing for our conversation today, I thought she would probably appreciate hearing that because it was just something in the background. And I think for a lot of us, we don't know the impact that we can have on people because it's not always shown. The critic is a little bit louder than somebody that appreciates or that is a silent observer. And I'd put myself into that category. I'm not done with the stool yet because I really like that. I think it sounds like you have a really solid kind of like personal meter, if you will, like a thermometer, just checking how you're feeling in those 3 areas that mean so much to you. How did you develop that? Did you have a mentor? Did you have a therapist? Did you just trial and error everything? Because delegating is something that I've had to learn the hard way and probably will continue to learn for the rest of my life, even when it comes to chores at home. That's what I want to know. Where did you come up with that?
It's a good question. On your question on therapist, mentor, coach, yes to all of the above. I think all of the ways you can invest in yourself are important, and you have to know what is important for you at the time. And I recently went through an experience where I have an executive coach. One of the groups I was working with had another coach that they brought in. And honestly, I felt a little overwhelmed with the coaching. Ironically, it was a bit too much. But to answer your question specifically about how I got there, my mom will tell you that I was basically born with a planner. She was like, you had a planner in your crib to map out your day and your life. But I have always, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think I even made a reference to it to Jody the other day, who does not read that much. He was like, of course I read that. So it's apparently a book everyone has read. It was a book that had an incredible influence on me when I was a pretty formidable stage in my professional development, where taking time to think about your big rocks and your priorities and really thinking about your roles in life relative to those priorities has been a process that I have always, since whatever point in my 20s to today, that I have always brought into my weekly planning process. And I have a quarterly planning process that I'm pretty diligent with. And I say pretty because there have been seasons where I haven't been able to do it, and it is hard. And I typically go away somewhere. I spend a night overnight by myself, and I typically go through my quarterly planning process in a very dedicated environment. Jody can have on a television, his laptop, his phone, and maybe even talking to someone, and he can process big things. If I come home, let's say I popped home over lunch today, he'd have on 4 TVs or something, and it is overwhelming to me. And I know that about myself. When I don't do it, again, that's when I feel it. So that is a process for me that has been very helpful. And so when I'm thinking about my week and I'm thinking about my day, I'm identifying what are those 3 really critical things that I need to get done that are going to move my business forward, that are going to facilitate capabilities or work inside the organization, support people. I view my professional side through the business, the work, and the people. So I divide it into those 3 buckets, and I try to focus on what those priorities are. And then I break that down into a daily view. When I am out of balance, I am typically not going through that weekly or daily process. And that's another indicator for me that I'm out of balance. And my team has heard me say this way more than they want, but going slow to go fast, I view those things as exactly that. If I'm not going slow to identify my quarterly priorities, my weekly, my daily, it is going to take me longer to do something, accomplish something, make an impact, versus if I am going slower, I am then able to facilitate and move more quickly and effectively.
That is gold. Go slow to go fast. It really is, because I felt that so much. I was laughing with Peyton the other day saying, even though I've been in the entrepreneurial space for 5 years, going full time was very different. From August to probably like January of last year, I had that like chicken with my head cut off energy. I don't know that I would have said that in the moment, but looking back, it feels like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, frantic. I need to do all these things versus, okay, let's pump the brakes. Let's decide where your zone of genius is, where you can really focus your time, and then where you can delegate the rest, and really just sitting, planning and thinking. But it feels so counterproductive sometimes. Like a pause feels like going backwards versus being in neutral and re-energizing yourself to move forward.
And I think the environment that we work in, Paige, to expound on that just a bit, is always on communication. In a corporate environment like ours, we have multiple chat channels, and then you have email, and then you're on calls. And so when you are going slow, it feels 5 times slower than it felt 5 years ago. It feels uncomfortable because you're pausing and you're not responding to immediate communication. That discomfort, when I feel that, I know that I'm in the right space, or I'm on my way to the right space, because I know that I'm pausing and I'm taking that breath to really focus on those things. And again, when you get really busy, you can justify, I need to be busy. It's harder to justify the going slow to go fast, but it is the most valuable way to spend your time if you truly want to be productive and effective.
Yeah, it is hard. I believe and subscribe to that wholeheartedly and feel it very hard in my own life. I was recently talking to somebody who works for Google. He's experimenting with some AI for coaching and trying to make it more accessible to younger people at an affordable price point. How I feel about that, I'm still deciding, but I did want to be part of the experiment of him figuring it out. Anyways, he said that he really encourages people not to respond to emails and say sorry for the delay. And I felt like that was really interesting, because I'm like, oh yeah, there really isn't a timeline on what you're doing or when you need to respond. But people are so often being like, I'm sorry for the delay, or feeling like you need to be responsive all the time. And so that's something I try to remind my clients. This is a random question, but I think we've talked about it before, and I can't remember. What is your enneagram number?
Oh, we have talked about this before. I am a 2 with a very strong wing 3. So the ready, which is RHETI, I think, from the Enneagram Institute, I've taken the test, and my 2 and 3 numbers are 1 point apart. So I probably present to a lot of people as a 3 in the professional environment. I definitely feel like I'm more of a 2 in my domestic world, but I also have a lot of 2 traits that show up at work as well. And then when a 2 goes to stress, a 2 goes to 8, and the 8 is the challenger. What I've loved about learning more about the Enneagram, and I'm a huge fan, is when I feel that 8, that's another trigger of, okay, you're in stress. Why are you in stress? What do you need to do to create a healthier environment for you to think through what's next? Sometimes I do it well. Sometimes I do not.
I do remember us talking about it, and I was actually going to guess a 3. And I think that comes from like how you present, like you said. And I'm almost the same with the Ready, the RHETI test that they have online. It's very extensive for anybody that wants to go take it. And I think it's $12 too, but it revealed that I was almost like a split 7-8. And I remember in college feeling like I almost had multiple personalities, because I was trying to be the life of the party and also the best at school and softball. And I'm like, those don't always coincide. And I say this so that anybody listening is encouraged to go take the Enneagram and learn a little bit about your tendencies so that you can set yourself up for success. But I learned that I lean more towards a 1. So I'm very hypercritical when I'm in those feelings of stress. And so I find myself like nitpicking everything that I normally don't. Like normally as a 7, I'm just like, yeah, we'll figure it out.
It's great that you see that, Paige, because Jody is a 7. I'm pretty sure he's a 7 wing. I always say he's a 7 with a wing 7. I think he's an 8. And when he goes to stress, he goes to organizing, getting real picky on certain things. And again, you are who you are, and understanding who you are so that you're able to work through those times of stress, work through those times of need, help people understand what you need is so helpful. So I'm with you. I think it's such an amazing tool. We use it at work as well, not on all of our teams. We certainly use it on the leadership side, and it's really helpful. My team will sometimes say, I don't need you to help. I just need to give you awareness to this, because my 2 is like, but I'm here to help. That's what I need to do. And that's not what they need me to do. So using that language and understanding that has been real helpful for us as well.
I can't agree more. The last question that I have for you, which I ask all of our guests, is what does it mean to be a woman in the arena?
I think it means bringing your whole self to the arena. And that looks like authenticity for me. It looks like humor. It looks like balance. And when I bring all 3 of those things to the arena, people feel more connected. I feel more connected. I'm not gauging or judging how I'm showing up because I'm not trying to be someone that I'm not. I have a close friend and a person I've worked with for a really long time who talks about the arena a ton. What I love about the woman in the arena is I'm very visual, as we've talked about with the stool. I literally think about walking into the arena and I see myself in all my roles. And because I'm visual, I see that my hair is down and I'm in a professional ensemble. I've got my hair in a bun and I'm in my workout gear and I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm in some combination in between and I'm hanging out with my family and doing something fun and spending time with them, or going on a date with Jody. It's almost as if you're walking in and you've got all of yourself in all of the embodiment of that. And that's okay. You don't need to leave anyone behind. In fact, you can show up in the arena stronger than ever by bringing your whole self. So that's what it means to me.
I love that. That's a really unique twist on anything I've heard so far. So I appreciate it.
Oh, good. Yes. You just tapped into my competitive side, Paige. Way to go.
You and that definition so far. I'll keep you posted. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being a woman in the arena. Thank you for how you lead and just the human you are. And I can't thank you enough for being here to share all of your expertise and knowledge with all of us.
Thank you, Paige. And I also want to thank you for being vulnerable and making the leap that you made. I know that when you speak about it, you always speak about it in a way that's helpful to others. But I think everyone should also know that it was a big leap. It was very courageous. It was very brave. And you should applaud yourself for doing that and for creating such a wonderful community. I'm excited to see where you continue to take it.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. Thanks for having me.
I hope today's episode inspired you on your journey in the arena. Make sure to check out the show notes in the description for a rundown of today's show with all the important links. If you enjoyed this, please share with a friend. I know how much it means to me when my friends share podcasts. Leave us a review and let us know it landed with you over on Instagram at Paige_Renee15. As always, your best bet is on yourself.